So again, welcome to Make It Happen. We have a very special guest with us from Intel. Her name is Maria Spence. She's been engaged with us here at Arizona State University on many occasions with some of my faculty colleagues, those of whom are here lurking in the background. So shout out to my colleague, Allie, for introducing me to Maria. And Maria, it's great to finally meet you, see you virtually. Yeah. Thank you, Allie. So thanks so much for your time here today. We convene these Make It Happen sessions weekly, all throughout the academic year. It's looking like we're gonna continue this into the summer. So very excited to host these and have somebody of your caliber join us. A lot of times it's myself and other faculty who are, sharing some of what we think are really valuable methodological lessons, but to have somebody coming from Intel and providing your vantage point on what makes you more competitive and more of a rock star is certainly powerful for the students that we have here convened, and hopefully will be watching as well. So again, generally we've been doing these in person. So in many cases, we do go around the room and introduce ourselves, but as more folks continue to join, I'm really happy to see a good solid turnout here virtually today. It might make the most sense that we hold off on introductions until after you've had a chance to kind of give us your introduction, your background, and some of the main takeaways you want to leave us with here today. And what I'll do is invite everyone who's joined us here and those who might continue to drop in to go ahead and think about, as Maria is delivering some thoughts about how to be fearless, I'd challenge you to be fearless as well. In about 25 minutes or a half an hour, we'll open it up for Q&A. That's the power of these types of sessions, where we can go ahead and ask you to go ahead and ask Maria directly questions and concerns that you might have related to this topic, or quite frankly, Maria, maybe any topic that these learners might be interested in grilling you on, so to speak. And
fair enough.
Yeah, we've already had some really good dialogue happening before the session began. Parit was able to ask some questions about internship evolutions at Intel. So just as a point to everyone who's come on, Maria, thank you so much. Maria was willing to share her email address with all of you who have joined today. So if you're lucky enough to have access to the chat function of this Zoom meeting, you can see Maria's email address in the Zoom chat window right now. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Maria, and she's going to share her screen. So while she's sharing her screen, if anybody has any logistical questions or any overarching questions about Make It Happen and why we get together, please feel free to, as Andrew is doing right now, saying hi and asking via chat, and we'll go from there. So again, Maria, thank you so much for being here. And before you get started, you got to tell us, are you a Sun Devil? You seem very proud to be aligned with ASU.
I'm definitely not a Sun Devil. I'm a Wildcat. So I haven't told any of my friends I'm here. I'm just kidding. But no, I've been to, I went to U of A for both my degrees. So, but that said, I'm an equal opportunity lecturer. I have a lot of good friends that are affiliated with ASU, so I will forgive them for that.
Oh yeah, no, even we're big fans of U of A. It's a great rivalry that we have in the state of Arizona. So we're very proud to host you here today. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, so thank you for the introduction. So my name's Maria Spence. I'm here to try to help convey the importance of fearlessness in the workplace. So just before we get started, I'm going to go through a little bit about myself. So I've been at Intel for a little over 4 years now. My current role is as a platform architect. And my focus at Intel is right now L4, L5 fully autonomous vehicles. So what I basically work on is the compute module, the compute platform that goes into those autonomous vehicles. And the market segment that we're targeting right now is more of the transportation as a service, as a TaaS or mass market, which is kind of your robo-taxi. So if you can think of like an automated Uber, that would be kind of where my main focus is right now. Before being at Intel, I worked at General Dynamics, where I worked on secure network architecture and reliability and availability, high availability and reliability systems. So those are kind of like your 5.9 systems. I worked on it with Allie, so she knows what I'm talking about. And I also have 2 degrees, as I mentioned, from the University of Arizona in systems engineering. So I don't have what you would say maybe a super technical degree, like a hardcore EE or mechanical or CS degree. I'm a systems engineer, but I think when we go into what I'm talking about, it's fine. I have a hard time explaining what systems engineering in some places. I don't know, does ASU have a systems engineering degree program there?
Of course we do.
Okay. Sometimes when I bring it up, they're like, what is that? And then I have to kind of elaborate on it. But if you have it, then you know. And I also have 2 little boys, 4 and 6, and they are home right now. And I am in the progress of learning how to be a homeschool teacher to both of them. So if you hear them in the background or hear me yelling at them, I apologize in advance.
Even more authentic.
More authentic, yes. So before I get started on why fearlessness is important in the workplace, I kind of wanted to touch on why it matters. What does this contribute to? What's the point of being fearless? And to me, the big heavy hitters here are personal and professional growth, and trying to define what that even means. So for a good portion of our lives, we spend our time trying to achieve something, right? So when we're younger, we're learning how to walk or talk or read or write. And then as we get older, those challenges become more difficult and complex. So we start to look at, how are we going to get into a good college? How are we going to get the right internship? How do we grow to be a great leader or a good friend? What are the attributes we need to achieve those goals? And this is part of our professional and personal growth. So for personal growth, we can have really clear milestones sometimes, like maybe I want to hit a new PR in running or a better score in golf, learn new languages, master new instruments. But a lot of times they're very abstract. Things like, I want to become a more patient person, a more mindful person, someone who's more proactive in going out and achieving milestones. Professional growth is kind of the same way, right? So we have our clear milestones. I want to get a promotion. I want to be a business owner. I want to, get a big pay raise. But other times, the ones that matter the most are a lot of the softer ways that we grow, which is, how do I influence a business or a team? How do I effectively lead an organization or drive innovation within my team? Increase duties and responsibilities. So those are types of ways we measure professional growth. And when you go out into the, whatever career it is you decide to embark on, and you're going through what I really tend to loathe these days are these annual assessments you'll have with your managers. They'll go over things like professional growth, and they'll see like how far you've come in achieving some ways that you've grown as a leader or as an asset to the company. So then we look at, okay, I know these are the ways that I want to grow, but what can hinder that growth? And a lot of times they're personal things. They're personal and hurdles that we set for ourselves, right? Things like anxiety or fear or doubt. We tend to want to overanalyze things as engineers and see all the ways we can fail, or be scared of the fallout of not performing well. And sometimes that can stop us in our tracks and prevent us from doing the things we want to achieve in life. So then, knowing that, what can we go and do for ourselves to avoid these types of self-inflicted hurdles in our journey? And this is where we come to the self-help section of the Amazon bookstore. There are a lot of people have this common question, right? How do we go and become better people, right? Either personally or professionally. And there's a wealth of resources out there. There are books to help you embrace your vulnerability, books to help identify emotional triggers, tame anxiety, grow grit, lean in and lean out and take a leap. And these are great books. I read a few of them, and I think they're helpful. But what I've noticed is a common theme in these books are how do we address and face the fears and anxieties in our lives and say, yeah, I know and acknowledge that I'm afraid or feeling anxious about something I'm about to do, but that's okay. And I can keep going and I'm still going to show up. And a lot of times the conclusion in these books is that with time and conscious practice, you can change your thinking and your behavior. And that change can happen quickly for some. Some people are able to adapt, quickly identify that fear and move forward without a second hesitation. And then you have folks like me that take daily practice of facing your fear, acknowledging the fear, and then just continuing to show up and do the work, right? And managing that fear in a way that over time becomes less. So for me, fearlessness is an essential tool in helping to optimize your professional and personal growth. So hopefully that saved you some time and a few $100 in books. So let's move to the next slide. So I found this to be a really interesting quote, and I'm not familiar with the author of this quote, but I thought it was very blunt, and I liked that because the idea of personal growth can sound very fun, right? It sounds like something we can go do and become great people and just unbounded potential, right? And I think that's what we all want, but we have to also acknowledge that with any type of change, especially changing yourself, it's very hard, right? Anything worth doing is going to be hard. So being fearless to me is a new habit that must be formed, and it will take time and effort to achieve the habit of being fearless. Are there any questions? Am I talking too fast? Everyone okay so far? It's kind of weird doing this online since it's like I'm talking into a void, but I hope everyone's okay.
You're okay.
Okay, thank you.
Great. By the way, I'm keeping an eye on the chat box for you, and there's no questions directly thus far, but yes, everyone is now saying it's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I am going a little bit fast. I'll probably wrap up quickly, but I'll try to slow it down a little bit. Okay, so now we know why we want to be fearless, but what does it actually mean to be fearless? And I put in this picture because the way I learned about how to practice fearlessness was yoga, right? So one day I was in a Bikram yoga class, which for those of you who haven't done that before, it's hot yoga. And it's miserable. I don't know why I keep doing it. But when I was in class one day, we were in this awful pose, not this pose that I'm showing you, but a similarly awful pose. And I'm waiting for the teacher to give us the instruction to move on to the next pose, like just counting down the seconds to when I can finally be comfortable. And right when I thought she was about to relieve us, she basically said, let's stay here for a little moment longer and learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And to me, that phrase really sums up well the idea of being fearless. It's the idea that you want to do something that brings you a lot of fear, but you do it anyway. And that could be anything like public speaking or interviews or networking or, big technical challenges. The idea that brings you discomfort and fear when you think about doing it, but you still manage to just accept that discomfort and keep working and keep moving on. So it's the idea that you'll fail, maybe it'll be a struggle, but you take the situation straight on and you tackle it. And you may not have all the answers right away, but you will eventually. So what are some steps to being fearless? Let's try to make it like an easy 1, 2, 3 type of thing. And I've tagged this article down below, which I thought was really great kind of source that sums up the ways people can be fearless. I really liked it because it was kind of quick and concise, but here's kind of like a summary of what it kind of conveys. Acknowledge your fear or anxiety and how it affects you. So this kind of comes back to understanding your emotional IQ, right? So acknowledge that your fear is an emotion and it drives a response from you, and that'll impact your decisions that you make for yourself. So once you've understood what your triggers are and what your responses are, this kind of gives you an opportunity now to proactively prepare for dealing with these types of emotions and situations. So if I know that I tend to shy away from things like networking because it drives me batty, I get super anxious, I tend to go back inside and retreat and become very introverted. If I know that that's my response to that type of situation or trigger, I can say, well, I'll get a buddy, maybe a buddy who's very good at networking or very extroverted, to basically pull me along on these types of events, right? So I'll have my networking buddy, they'll introduce me, they'll help warm me up essentially to the environment. And then after a few of these, I can eventually learn to do this thing on my own. But that idea that I've acknowledged the fear and the response and the trigger helps me prepare. And that comes to the second point: plan for it, prepare for it, address your fear. So having a plan can oftentimes mitigate your feeling of fear and provide you with a sense of more control of the outcome. This is a great way to prevent yourself from overthinking or overanalyzing the situation. It's kind of like the idea of like, if I write it down, then I can stop thinking about it, right? So it's basically saying, yes, I know I could fail, or yes, I know it could go wrong, but now that I have a plan in place, at least I know that I'm not without a safety net, right? An example that I have is after undergraduate, I wanted to go to med school, right? So I graduate with my engineering degree and I decide, oh, you know, I like engineering, but I kind of want to try being a doctor, right? But one of the things that I really hesitated on was, well, if I try to go down this route, I may spend a lot of money and time, I might not get into med school, things like that. Now here I am, maybe years later, with no job experience. I've probably got more student debt, you know, and I basically started to freak myself out with all of these consequences of what if my plan doesn't work, or what if it doesn't work out the way I want it to, I'll never get in, blah, 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 right? So what I did was I made a plan and I said, well, I can try to apply to medical school and finish all of my prerequisites while also getting a degree in something else, right? I can try to offset the time I'm out of work with getting a graduate degree. And so I did an engineering graduate degree as I prepared. And the funny thing was out of all of that, I decided I ended up liking engineering more. And so I ended up leaving with my master's and not actually pursuing med school. But the point is that my plan helped me start my path instead of freezing me in my tracks, right? So I could have just left with an undergraduate degree, lived with the regret of never trying, and gone off to work. But instead, I think I was able to, with my plan, go down a path that helped me actually understand myself better, understand my career likes and dislikes better, and help me utilize that time well. Grow your confidence. So this is really important. And this is really where the practice part starts to kick in. So the areas where you have the most fear are the places to focus on and building that confidence. So this kind of comes back to my example of networking, right? If you can expose yourself to these things over time and become masters of that area, eventually you'll grow that confidence to become comfortable with it. And it's kind of like exposure therapy or something like that, where you gain familiarity and confidence to the point that the fear is no longer a hindrance. For example, right now, I can't say I'm a great public speaker, but I can say at least I'm less afraid of doing it than I was before. And that's through daily practice or just making sure that I expose myself to these types of situations regularly enough that when I come into them, I'm not faced with that same fear that I had initially, right? It's just practice, it's studying, it's every day showing up, exposing yourself and practicing being comfortable with that discomfort. And eventually you feel that you've mastered that area enough that you say, now I'm confident and comfortable with this. And last but not least, know that you can ask for help, right? Don't be afraid to ask for help. One of the things that I've learned being in the industry is that engineering products take millions of man hours from people all around the world, and nobody else expects anyone to have all of the answers or to do it all alone. In work, in family, community, we have to know that we can support each other and lean on each other at all times. So be brave, and when you're feeling overwhelmed or unsure, just know that folks are always ready to help, right? So I think it takes a lot of bravery and fearlessness just to make sure that you understand that it's okay to ask for help and that you don't need to carry it all on your own shoulders. So why do we need fearlessness in the workplace? And I think, well, because we want to be there for the opportunities that we want, right? When I started my career as an engineer, I was pretty timid, and I was always afraid of things like rejection, not being smart enough or clever enough. I think maybe folks have heard of imposter syndrome before. So that's kind of the fear of thinking, oh, they'll find out that I'm not really meant to be here kind of thing. And that's okay. But what happens when you stay comfortable and you're not really extending yourself to be available for these new opportunities that you may want, you know, you just kind of stay where you are and it's safe. But you really, oops, hello? But striving for that dream job or dream opportunity means that you'll need to put yourself out there. Accept that maybe you're not going to be the smartest person in the room or 100% qualified for a job, and that's okay. The important thing is to be brave and know that you will grow and you will adapt and that you have something to contribute. Don't let something amazing pass you by because you hesitated due to fear. One of the funny things when I was working with Allie was that Intel had offered these interviews. They were, you know, working on a big hiring campaign, and I was actually like 40 weeks pregnant or something ridiculous like that. But and I was a little, you know, a lot afraid that when I walked in for interviews there with this giant belly of mine that they would say, like, no, thank you, like you're about to need 3 months off. But, you know, I wasn't afraid, or I was afraid, but I said, that's okay, because I've always wanted to work at Intel. And this is a great chance for me to get in. And I don't want that to pass by just because I was afraid of being the perception of myself being pregnant. So I went in and it worked out great. And it won't always work out great, but I think knowing and accepting some of the risks that you take, it tends to work out well. And it's at least better than living with the regret of not trying at all. One of the other important things is to make the tough and sometimes unpopular decisions, to do the right thing. To lead with integrity, it's sometimes hard because you could make decisions that hurt people's feelings, that impact people's jobs and livelihoods, or put people in really tough spots that, you know, make them feel uncomfortable and maybe puts a strain on your personal or professional relationships. But being fearless also means doing the right things right and acting with integrity. So you have to be fearless in standing up for what you believe in and maintaining a high standard of ethics. You'd be surprised how quickly people are sometimes to turn away or be complacent in a bad situation rather than acknowledge it and act on it. So as part of your professional and personal growth, I think being fearless to be able to do the right things right is really important for you and your community. Third thing is to stand out as the diverse and unique contributor that they expect. So this means always bring you to the party. This means that you are an individual and being a diverse and unique perspective and skill set. and do not shy away from the spotlight when it's on you. Be fearless in your presence, even if you don't feel it in your bones. This is kind of where I say fake it till you make it works best in building that confidence. Even if you feel like if you're at a meeting and your ideas may not be the greatest or that you just don't belong, I say just fake it until you make it, until it's all about you. Contribute and keep contributing. It's really funny when I was a younger engineer and I would be in these meetings and I would just sit quietly. And I would always be afraid to contribute alongside senior engineers or more experienced folks. And I would listen to their conversation and I'd say, well, I shouldn't say what I want to say because it's clearly obvious and everyone already knows this. But then later I would go into one-on-ones or smaller meetings and we would talk it out, and it would actually be something that they really valued and wish I'd said something during the meeting. So don't be afraid to speak out, to bring your unique perspective to the workplace. It's exactly why they hired you, right? And the fourth thing, be bold, drive innovation and persist. So one of the quotes that I always fall back on is, an inventor fails 999 times, and if he succeeds once, he's in. Treat failure simply as practice shots. This is Charles Kettering. So great achievements are often preceded with great failures, right? We don't always get it on the first swing. Sometimes we have to do it over and over for years and years, maybe. But the point is, your failure does not define you, and it may not even block your path. It's how you deal with your failure that may be the blocker to your path. So you face that fear every time and you keep trying, even though the outcome may not be certain for success. So to me, part of being fearless is also growing that grit to say, yeah, today it didn't work, but tomorrow it might, and showing up for that day. So in summary, fearlessness doesn't have to be a blind leap of faith. It can be a measured risk, right? I'm not asking you to jump off an airplane with no parachute. It's just saying that you can make a plan to help you measure that risk. And if you succeed, awesome. If you fail, then you can handle it. What's in your plan? Understand what you're capable of and your thresholds. You know, we all have things that we know we are worth working for, that are worth accepting that feeling of ick and uncomfortableness, discomfort. What are your thresholds for that? And can you stay the path and build that endurance that you'll need through constant practice? Let the fear eventually turn itself into confidence. Personal and professional growth will become more complex. As we go through our career, our challenges will become bigger. And they'll seem scarier and harder to overcome, but don't let that intimidate you. Don't let the fear be the thing that stops you from trying. I've, in my career, found that even though I don't have all of the answers, and even though I'm not maybe the smartest person in that room that day or ever, what I have noticed is that my ability to at least show up to try, to say, I will at least try and stick with it until I can find a solution. That has been what usually gets me to the most places, is just putting myself out there and saying, yeah, that sounds like a hard problem, but I'd like an opportunity to give it a shot. And I think when you work, your colleagues need that. They need someone to say, who's going to be able to step up and at least give it a shot and stick with it. So that's one thing that I think has been really important to me. And start your practice now. So you're in university and you're facing a lot of challenges right now with you know, the change in how we're doing school through online and things like that. But start practicing now. Start practicing through your internships, through your classes, through the relationships you have and develop in your university and through those internships. And then as you become more accustomed to practicing that and it becomes more of a daily focus for you, you'll be able to extend that well into your career. And that's it for me, 32 minutes.
Fantastic.
Any questions?
Thank you so much, Maria.
Sure.
We had a great turnout here on Zoom today, and I'm so glad we did, because that was one of the best talks we've had as part of this Make It Happen series so far. So again, Allie, thanks so much for the tee up, the introduction. Maria, kudos, you nailed it. So
Oh, thank you.
as promised, I'd like to turn it over to the participants here that have joined us. We normally do around the room introductions before we start with all of our guests in person. We didn't do that today virtually, but in place of introductions, I would challenge each of you to either ask a question, follow-up question to Maria, or to introduce yourself to Maria. And if nothing else, you can say great job or all good in person, or virtually, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and call on somebody, so get ready. In the meantime, I'll be the first one to start. Maria, have you, so it's funny, I actually posted a link in the chat. I read an article literally yesterday that talked about the tenets of becoming an intrapreneur. And intrapreneurship is something I talk a lot about in my day job as an innovation faculty member. So a lot of the best practices that you shared with being fearless actually correlate almost directly with some of the broad-stroked methods of being an intrapreneur. I'm curious, have you ever thought of yourself as an intrapreneur now that you've been practicing being more and more fearless at Intel?
Oh, definitely. I think the thing that I never really considered when I was coming, going to work out of university was personal branding. I always thought that was kind of like a weird, I don't know the nicer way to say it, but a douchey way, kind of a douchey phrase. Because I'm like, what is personal branding and what does that even mean? I'm a person, I'm an engineer, I go to work, they tell me what to do and then I do it. But as you get older and you decide, or, some people have this insight right away, they know what they want to do. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. But when you know what you want to do, and you go into the workforce, personal branding is super important. And you can't really do that without kind of looking at yourself as your own business, right? You have a skill set you want to sell. You have a perspective. You have a vision for things, right? And to me, that's kind of the same thing as running a business or starting your own business. You have to be able to understand who you are, what your goals are, what your vision is, and how to, implement that and go forward with that. And I think fearlessness is part of that, right? You have to be able to say, yeah, maybe they don't get it. Maybe they don't think they need what I have. But making sure that you're putting yourself out there, advocating for yourself, letting people know what it is you're capable of. To me, that's all really heavy in the entrepreneur spirit. So I don't know, to me, they're hand in hand. I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to be fearless, right? It's one of the bravest things I think a person can do.
Great. Perfect answer, except for the very first part. We're going to have to edit that out.
Sorry.
No, I'm joking. That's fantastic.
I'm so bad about those slogan phrases and buzzwords. So when I hear them off the bat, I'm like, blah. But they're there for a reason, and it's because they have weight.
It's great. Yeah, I saw Allie's reaction, and I was.
Cracks me up. Well, and one thing, I want to tell all the students out there, because you're not getting this from her speech today, is because Maria is a badass, and she talks about how, you have to be able to control this fearlessness. And I think that if people can sense fear in you, they don't want you. And what you want is you want them to know that you have this amazing confidence. So you don't want people to look at you and say, oh, she's scared. You want them to look at you and be like, holy crap, I am scared of this girl or this guy.
Exactly.
Because they have something to offer. And so what she's not telling you is when she was deciding between leaving General Dynamics and joining at Intel, she actually went back and forth several times between the companies and made them fight for her, because she was able to sit those interviews and say, here's what I got, and you need what I got. You're not good enough without me. And she was able to go back and forth multiple times to get better positions and more money, honestly, out of both companies until she could make the decision where she felt most comfortable, because it wasn't going into an interview and saying, oh, I'm 37 weeks pregnant. I don't know if this is a good idea. Maybe I'm not good enough at this. No, she went in and said, it doesn't matter that I'm pregnant. You need me here. And I can tell you exactly why. So being able to really kind of transmit that confidence that you said, that was that third bullet point, having that confidence to know that you are unique and everyone before you, this is the hardest part, I think, for students that are starting out. You've been trained in college to think that there is a right answer because there's homework, there's tests, there's a right answer, it's right or wrong, until you start working and there's no right answer there. So you have to know that what I have inside and what I'm projecting out there and the knowledge I'm bringing to the table, that's the right answer. Because if they already had the right answer, they wouldn't need me. They need me because
exactly. I have been in so many meetings where you have a group, like a brain trust of senior engineers, and they're all just, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for your perspective, and they're looking for your innovation and your inexperience, or just whatever it is. Bring that to the table, because a lot of times you'll fall into places where there's a lot of groupthink, and they just circle around the same 3 wrong answers for months, and they need an injection of something new and fresh. And I think that's where, your perspective and your unique skill set comes into play. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What Allie's not saying is the time that she was in front of a whole NASA meeting.
I want to hear this one.
Oh my gosh, this was the best thing. And this is Allie to me, which, sorry to get off topic, but to me, this is like one of the most fearless things I've ever seen. Was we had all spent 2 days presenting to NASA I can't remember, for some program we were working on. And NASA wasn't thrilled, right? They're never thrilled talking to us. And Allie comes in, last presenter on the last day. Everyone's ready to go home. And she just busts in with this energy. And I don't know if any of you met Allie, but she's like tiny, petite, little of a woman. And she comes in with this full energy of like, I'm here. And then oh God, I can't remember. She had this joke about, here it is, like, what is it, the Rolling Stones or something like that? I don't know. But she had the whole room in stitches, and they just ate it up because she did. She brought that confidence. And if she was afraid, none of us could tell. If she was nervous, none of us could tell. And I think that's important in this whole, convey your confidence, fake it till you make it, just be there. Be bold, right? And people will, they'll glom onto it, quite frankly. And they did. They ate up every word Allie said, and it was like the most amazing thing I had ever seen. She turned that thing around 360.
The moral of this story is know your audience, okay? So the room is full of guys in their 60s, a bunch of old white guys in their 60s. So I think, okay, what do white guys in their 60s like? That's my dad. They love old rock and roll, right? They will not listen to music of today. And so I walked in and said, thank you so much for the 9 hours. This meeting had been 9 effing hours that we had been there. Thank you for the 9-hour opening act, but Pink Floyd has arrived. And for some reason, the most hilarious thing, because then they start talking about when they went and saw Pink Floyd in 1972 in Pittsburgh. And I was like, could we get on with my presentation maybe? So the real goal is in the room, you want to break down the tension. But I have a question for Maria, and as you guys are thinking of your questions, we've got a lot of young women on here. And I posted this session out to the Society of Women Engineers, so a couple of girls jumped on from that club as well. And there's a lot of, stress when you start a new job, whether you're a woman or not, just anyone that's new starting a job. And for me, what I know about you from working for years for me is Maria knows everyone. Maria is the girl that you want to be in with because she seems to have the greatest relationship with everyone on the team. And that really was a great support system to be able to lean on, like she said, a buddy, to have somebody to, just vent to, or someone to run ideas by sometimes when you're just starting out. So how would you kind of suggest people kind of build their network when they're just starting out in a new company?
Yeah, networking's rough. I'm still having a hard time with networking, but I feel like personal branding and networking, that all goes hand in hand. And I can't think actually of a more necessary tool in your career than networking. I really wanted to not believe that because I don't like the idea of talking to strangers and making kind of artificial connections because maybe one day I might need a favor from them or they might need a favor from me. I don't like those types of interactions. I always feel like they feel really disingenuous and why? You don't care about me, right? So, but the thing is that when you're in a company, especially a big one like Intel or anywhere, even if it's in university, a network of folks who you know are kind of plugged into the things that you want to do is really essential. You know, when I was in university, I didn't have a great study group. And what I basically had to do was kind of go around and try to find like, hey, can I study with you guys? What are you guys doing after school? Is it okay if I like hang around, right? And those types of small connections that you make, even in university, they extend themselves way out into your career because those people will go out, they'll get jobs. They'll get jobs at companies you may want to work for. They might be doing things that you want to like learn more about. So, you know, those are all ways that you can network. People you meet at coffee shops, people you talk to casually in the hallway. Those are all networking. So you don't have to think about networking as going to one of those awkward events where everyone has a glass of wine and they're all just kind of, hey, I'm so-and-so buddy from R&D. Like, you don't have to limit yourself to those types of awkward situations. You can also just, you know, eat lunch with a friend, eat lunch with someone who's on your team that maybe you didn't get to know very well because most of your work's through email or something like that. You know, it can be any relationship you have in your life. That's all part of your network. It's personal, it's professional. These are all people that in some way contribute to how you're able to contribute. So I don't know, I guess just don't discount those things because they might not feel like a networking setting, but those are all actual points in your network.
And what I think is something that's really great that Maria always does, it's hard to always convey this, you know, in this kind of a forum. When she networks, she really gets to know the people. And I think that's something that women are really great at. And I hope the newer generations, younger generations are really good about that. Don't network with people just to get what you want, just to get that answer on that homework problem that you just didn't figure out. You want to network to get to know their families, to get to understand what are their likes, what kind of food do they bring to lunch. And so that way you really kind of get to build that humanity. And I think that's what everyone's kind of witnessing right now in the world is we've lost our humanity and we need to all come together to realize that whether it's, you know, combating these global issues or just combating a task at a workplace, you need to be able to know that you can rely on each other as people. And that kind of helps break down that fear of they're not going to like me and they're not going to trust me to do things. It's once people really get to know the human behind the workload. Don't you think that kind of makes a huge difference, the way that you approach people?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of folks, especially when you're in the office 40 hours or more a week, you want connection and you want to think, I'm not wasting my life with these strangers. And it's nice to know that you kind of, and not everyone subscribes to the idea of the work family, right? People like to keep things very partitioned sometimes, and that's fine too. But I think it's at least understanding that that person likes barriers, or understanding this guy has, you know, maybe comes in late because he has a family, or understanding each other, getting to know each other deeper than this guy works on software, this guy does validation. You know, I don't just look at people as their jobs, look at them as a whole person. And I think that is really what makes connections last longer and become more meaningful. And when you're more tied into each other like that, it's easy to say, hey, I see that maybe your group's been disbanded, right? Let me pull you in. You'll find people more proactively reaching out to help you than you have to actually reach out to them for help, because people will want to be there for you because they know that you're accountable, reliable, and genuine.
Great. Who else? Thank you, Ellie. Ellie, do you want to tell everybody who you are and what you teach? I've seen you behave as Maria described in our faculty meetings, so you might want to give all the students that have joined us here today a reason to take your class.
I think secretly I always wanted to be a comedian. I think that's all I can come up with. You know, I took my class. I teach FSC 100 is my main class, EEE 120. I'm the advisor for Society of Women Engineers. But yeah, when I have like 4 classes a week of the same lecture, I kind of approach it as my my 4 shows I do a week, and I hope that by Friday I have the best show, you know, that gets a standing applause at the end, but it usually doesn't work that way. I'm a teacher in the freshman engineering program. I'm a face a lot for a lot of our freshman engagement programs, but I've worked with Maria for years. She's one of my best friends, and so I really wanted to join this session to help all the new students realize that, you know, starting the new job is stressful, and it's not about the technical knowledge. It's really about bringing in a new relationship, a new perspective, and embracing, you know, the fear that she's talking about. You have to embrace it because you're going to be scared. It's just like when you ask someone out on a date, or you ask someone to marry you, or you ask someone to have a baby. All those are scary moments, but they lead to something so much greater.
Well said. Thank you, Allie, again for joining us and for everything. Who's up? We have about 15 minutes. Is it Aaron? Sorry, I saw your screen name. I apologize. It's probably not your actual name. Is it?
Oh, hi.
Sorry, yes. Tell me your name again. I think we've met.
Marin.
Marin. Yeah, so
Yes.
that is the name. Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, that wasn't adding up in my brain, so I apologize.
No, good. Sorry I'm late. I just got off my class. But I really loved what I caught at the end. I'm reading this book right now called The Myth of the Nice Girl by Fran Hauser. And everything that Maria said about like networking and how important it is, and how important it is to kind of step out of the quiet, you know, being nervous to say something in a group, to say something in, you know, the fear of not being, I guess, accepted in a meeting. It's like spot on with everything that I've read in this book. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Could you maybe type the name of the book in the chat so we could all take a look? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Marion, for that comment. Very similar to mine. But yeah, appreciate the book suggestion as well. Let's see. Mandy said hello earlier. Mandy, are you still with us?
No, I don't see her on.
Yes, hi.
Oh, hey, Mandy. Do you want to say hi, or do you have a question?
I actually have the issue of fear with interviews. Maria, would you please give any concern about that part?
Yeah, interviews is kind of a funny thing. It's kind of you're putting yourself out there, and you need to be able to pump yourself up and be able to convey your skills and everything with confidence, but at the same time you might be feeling a little bit weird talking to a stranger about this, or intimidated by the situation because you want the job and there's a lot at stake, things like that. For me, the best thing that I could do for interviews was do practice runs. And so I would pick a buddy that I felt comfortable with, someone that's been through a few interviews themselves, right? Have them come up with questions. And I would basically go through my resume. I would prep prep some answers, right? You know what kind of questions may be coming, right? So they're going to ask you, things like, what are times where you struggled and succeeded? Or maybe if you're in a team and you've had, how do you find yourself contributing in team settings, or worked with a difficult teammate? There's a lot of those types of soft skills questions. And then the technical questions are usually the ones that we answer the easiest in a lot of cases, but the softer ones to me are always a little bit harder because you want to know what they want to hear, kind of. So I would go through my resume, make sure you really know your resume in and out, because anything on there is fair game. They can ask you about anything, right? So you want to make sure you're familiar with that content. Try to go through some practice questions on your own, and then try to practice that response with yourself. And then when you can, find buddies to help you do dry runs. And once you've done them enough, you can almost do them in your sleep. It's the first one always feels a little hard, but once you've gotten into the rhythm of it, especially with enough practice with yourself and with a buddy, you'll find that I think interviews can be a little less daunting. That's kind of how I've approached it. Now I can BS my way through most interviews.
Classic. Good stuff. Great question. Thank you for that. And thanks for your insights there, Maria. I would concur on everything. I love how fresh you are. This is such a great twist to the I don't know, to what we've been doing for the last few weeks at least. Right, Eric? So I'm going to call on Eric. Eric, we have some new faces in the audience today. And Maria, obviously, here is our guest. Eric, would you mind telling everybody who you are and what you do? And
Sure, yeah.
invite people to come.
Don't say you work at Intel.
No, so I'm Eric Prosser. I am the engineering and entrepreneurship librarian at ASU Library, which I actually made for my background today, now that I have a background of ASU Library. So I'm here basically to support the Fulton schools, not just the engineering courses, but also, entrepreneurship and innovation, help you get the information that you need to succeed. I thought it was a great presentation today. And actually I had a thought just following off that last question about interviews. One thing to also keep in mind is getting to the interview, in the sense of when you're applying for positions, don't be afraid to apply for positions that you don't think you're qualified for. Because one of the biggest problems that, we have in terms of finding good, people to work is there's a lot of kind of basically self-censorship in going, oh, there's 10 qualifications here and I only meet 8 of them. There's no way I'm going to ever get an interview.
Exactly.
And you're definitely not ever going to get an interview if you don't apply. So I would say if there's a position that interests you, apply for it. And apply. It's a numbers game. Sometimes you'll apply for a position that you think you're perfect for and never get a call back. And then you'll apply for one that's a long shot and you'll get an interview and you might even get an offer out of it. So, the more you apply for, the more interviews you're going to get. The more interviews you get, the better you get at interviewing. And at that point, it's just, a matter of time before you actually find a position. So that's what I would encourage everyone to do, is apply as much as possible, get that practice in, and you'll make your own luck.
Yeah. And I think to that same point, right, I know a lot of folks that, do that thing. They self-censor themselves from applying to the position, even though I know they're totally qualified. But there'll always be 1 or 2 bullets on the listing that's like, oh, I don't know how to do that, or I've never done that before. Like, what am I supposed to do? And the thing, when I interview, or anyone I know that interviews, if it feels like they could learn it, that's fine, right? You'll get there. They don't need you to know everything on that listing. If you can show that you're a quick learner, that you're self-sufficient, all of those things, you don't need to have that whole entire rec covered. I think what people would be more interested in hiring a resource that they know is quick to adapt than somebody who fills a bullet list but then needs constant supervision or something like that, right? Or constant direction. So, those are all, exactly. Don't feel like you need to be 100% of the rec. I would say 60% good enough in most cases.
Great dialogue. It looks like we have time for one last question. If someone would like to jump in.
I had a quick question. So
Absolutely.
when you are starting something, so I'm starting an internship this summer, what are some tips that you have for me to connect with my managers or my supervisors? Because I can get I get really nervous. And I'm sure a lot of people do when it comes to that. What tips do you might have for that?
Well, Intel, we tend to do regular one-on-ones, which is just basically a regular, maybe 30-minute meeting every 2 weeks, or whatever you feel is appropriate, right? But what's important to bring to those one-on-one meetings is an agenda. You really want to focus on how you want to spend that time with that person, especially if it's someone like a higher level manager, things like that, because their time's usually very limited in how they can allocate it. So providing a clear agenda on the areas you want to focus on, questions up front, trying to keep the time really concise and well used. You can typically reach out to these folks, like managers, even if they're not someone you're working directly with. They know you're an intern, so they don't expect you to be like a rock star, super confident, senior engineer kind of thing. I mean, it's great if you are, but don't feel like you've failed if you show up a bit timid, right? They're there to help you grow. They're there to help give you that guidance that you need to be successful as well. But the important thing there is that, you reach out, just make sure you leverage that time, come prepared. One of the things I've learned as I've been working is a meeting with no agenda is a microaggression, meaning you don't respect their time, you don't respect your time. So don't show up with these meetings and to just, shoot the crap. You need to to know and come focused, so that way you can get things done.
All right, thank you.
Great advice. Great question too. Thank you, Marin. Anyone else? 2 minutes. Maria, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This was really fun.
Friend, I have a question for you. I'm a TM major and I'm struggling to find job under my major, and any companies I apply, they say you have to know programming or Microsoft or any kind of programming, C++ or Python. Why we are struggling like this? What is the secret? What I have to do? Please direct me here.
I think I might have missed some of the question. So is it you maybe is it knowing more than like a needed amount of programming languages? Sorry, I wasn't.
Yes, I'm TM major, and I thought maybe Brent can help me too. What we have to do, how we can find job out of. I know I'm entrepreneur. I have to make my own job and give job to other people, but I need to make money for my classes for school, and I can't find job under TM major.
Oh, so you're saying how to look. Sorry, my connection's kind of bad on here, but is it how to look for more opportunities in terms to apply for?
Yes.
Am I hearing that right? Okay.
What should I learn except entrepreneurship? I studied technological entrepreneurship and management. We don't learn any programming, but when I apply to different companies, they say you have to know programming included to your business.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an interesting thing. A lot of super technical companies tend to hire up from their engineering teams, and those resources will eventually become more of their business managers, right? So you're basically taking like a CS degree engineer, and then eventually they decide they want to go down a pipeline where they might get like a business degree and become more of like a GM or a VP or something like that, and they don't stay the technical path. So if you're going for places like Facebook or Google and things like that, they may want a core technical background because they see that as important to being able to manage a program or a team. And so it may be better if you're going into these positions and you might not have, like, I don't have a lot of programming experience, it's very limited. But what I can say is, I understand pseudo algorithms. I understand, maybe how to manage software programs or things like that. You need to be able to convey your skill set in a way that they can find useful. So if you're not going to be able to sit there, the important part is, are you going to be able to understand the needs without the technical background? And if not, then that might not actually be a great position for you. But you're going to want to find a way to, if you really want to go into those types of fields, then you may want to say, okay, what do I know and what can I understand that can translate that into how I can make this, what I do have from a technical perspective, work for you? Or what can I do in my spare time to kind of grow that for myself? What I ended up doing to become a little bit more proficient in software, I took some classes. I did like 6 months of software and Java development. It wasn't significant, but it was enough to be able to say, I know what it takes to make enterprise software, to deliver it using an agile system, things like that. Maybe it's not a deep knowledge, but I know overall, so I can make estimates on resourcing and scheduling and things like that would go into something like an overall program management. So it's not easy, I would say, but it would take some work, right? And it really depends on what your goals are and what you want to do for yourself and your own personal and professional growth to get there. And it may mean more work in the end.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Mhm.
Yeah, so great follow-on question. Thanks, Mandy. I know it's tough, to line up degree titles and degree learning outcomes with
Yeah.
specific roles within certain job markets. But I think Maria was able to provide some really good overarching mindsets and strategies to employ, not in the short term, but actually most of what she talked about was a long-term kind of approach to being fearless, regardless of what your degree title is. Your degree should not define who you are or what your role is within your life's work. So,
Systems engineer, right? So I mean, that means nothing to most people, but if you know how to spin it, right, then you can make it work.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up, but I didn't want to get too cute with Maria. But absolutely, systems engineering. She was asking if we offered that degree, and I would say, Mandy, I think TEM is really closely on par with a systems engineering degree. Not one for one, of course, but systems engineers typically aren't being told to learn how to write code during their baccalaureate.
No.
So if you are impressed with Maria's advancement in her own career, her feedback was spot on. So it's really, it's your will, and it's really a matter of how do I think ASU does a good job of positioning you as a master learner. And I know I sound like a billboard right now, but that's really what we're talking about right now. Is if you can earn a degree in TEM, our thought is you can learn anything. You can learn absolutely anything.
Exactly.
TEM was just the first set of learning outcomes you mastered or achieved. So anyway, Maria, I want you to have the last word, and then we're going to go ahead and say goodbye to everyone. So thanks again. Thanks to everyone for joining.
Yeah, thank you everyone for having me. And if anyone wants to reach out for any reason, just feel free to email me. I will be readily available for any questions. So don't hesitate.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
thanks everybody.
Thanks, Mandy. Thanks, Preet. Thanks, Mirren.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie. Thanks, everyone who joined. Appreciate you. And don't forget, before I close out, Maria's email is at the top of the chat if you want to copy it really quick.
Would you be able to post it one more time?
Sure. Maria, is that okay?
Yeah, feel free.
I don't want Mirren spamming you. There it is, down at the bottom.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Andrew.
All right, thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks, Maria. I really appreciate it. I'll send you the recording.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.